Hey everyone! Today I'm kicking off my top 30 favorite movie series with my 30th favorite film, Taxi Driver, from 1976 by Martin Scorsese. A walking contradiction. To me, this is one of the key lines in the film. It's a song lyric that one of the characters uses to describe Travis Bickle, our protagonist in Taxi Driver, but it can also be used to describe every human on Earth to some degree or another. It can be easy and comforting to look at the world in black and white, to judge people as good or bad, but would it represent the truth or the human experience? I don't think so. We're all full of contradictions, whether we like it or not. And to follow Travis Bickle is to watch a man take these contradictions right up to the brink. His story is in a movie that itself is full of contradictions, and like much of the most memorable art, elicits contradictory reactions within individuals, not just among them. As for me, Taxi Driver has been one of my cinematic touchstones ever since the first time I saw it in high school, to the point where I used to consider it one of my 10 favorite films. But something unusual happened. Even though I'd seen it many times, the last time I saw it before this video was a disturbing experience in a way that snuck up on me. Basically, I noticed the racial element more, and it seemed to me that a large part of Travis's animosity towards the world stemmed from a hatred and or fear of black people, which made me uncomfortable. Upon watching it again for this video, I think this racial hatred plays a smaller role, but my point is that the movie has the power to morph even after umpteenth viewings, finding a way to challenge us in our notions about why people are the way they are. In other words, it's still uncomfortable, and it's all the more relevant and amazing for it. But let's get specific. Our lead, Travis, is an ex Marine living in the heart of New York City, and the movie begins with him getting a job as a taxi driver because he can't sleep nights. We don't know any more about his background other than that, but right from the start, he shares his feelings with us by narrating his diary entries, and it's immediately apparent that he's in a dark place. He drives around at night and talks about how much he despises what he sees, and to be sure, the environment portrayed by Scorsese is fairly hellish. It's full of darkness, steam, prostitution, crime, aggression, and all around seediness. Understandable why one might not enjoy being there, but the language Travis uses is very aggressive, like open sewer, scum, animals referring to people, sick, venal, and things like that, on top of all the slurs he employs, which I won't repeat. And yes, it's these slurs and the various stare downs he has with black people that made me feel uncomfortable before, and still have the potential to rub one the wrong way. But now I've realized that the whole night seediness and racial elements, as being the reason for his eventual explosion, are, in my opinion, a surface level reading of the film. They may be contributing factors, but the real reasons, for me, are hinted at in two key lines from his narration. The first is, I'm God's lonely man. Deep down, he's extremely lonely. We don't know his past or what led to this, but he says he used to spend nights simply riding the subways and buses, not exactly the most social thing to do. When he's not driving, he spends all the time in his apartment alone. Sometimes he hangs out with his taxi driver friends, but he always seems detached from everyone. After he gets into guns and trains to become a vigilante, we see his only rituals in great detail: exercising, making equipment to carry his weapons, practicing using them, and fantasizing about violent encounters in the mirror. The famous "You talking to me" scene is absolutely haunting in this regard, reminding me of conversations I've overheard in real life of people salivating over getting an opportunity to have to use a gun. When Travis says, I'm the only one here, he seems pathetic in our agreement with him. There's another scene in his apartment that I didn't used to think much about, but now I think it says a lot, and that's when he watches TV, gun in hand, of a dance show with many couples slow dancing. It's a fairly long scene, so we can really feel his violent jealousy and or sadness combined with the dance music that's noticeably different in tone than the normal score we hear in the film. This leads me to the second key line Travis narrates to us, which is, I believe that someone should become a person like other people. To me, this indicates that there's a desire within Travis to improve, and this is my favorite aspect about the character. We can see this as clear as day in his courtship of Betsy, played by Sybil Shepherd, a woman of angelic beauty that catches his eye. Despite his sometimes strange behavior, he's actually able to go out on a date with her and successfully invites her to a second one. However, he doesn't have any social awareness whatsoever and is so out of touch with what's considered acceptable behavior that he takes her to a porno theater. I suppose during this scene, it might be easy for one to have no sympathy for Travis. After all, how can you be that clueless? But I always feel for him, like he genuinely didn't know that this was unacceptable. He tries to apologize to her, but he goes about it the wrong way without any self awareness. Even though he doesn't know how, he's a man trying to be a person like other people. Maybe a person like Betsy's coworker, played by Albert Brooks, which to me acts as a subtle contrast between a man who's charming, funny, normal, and whatever Travis is. I've somehow managed to get this far without mentioning Robert De Niro, whose performance as Travis is truly one for the ages. He sells all his complexities, his antisocial behavior, his awkwardness, and his occasional charm and flashes of goodness. It's amazing how all of these contradictions are so believable inside of one person, and how De Niro gradually evolves everything as it goes along. And boy, does he evolve into even further contradictions. Here's where I'll give a spoiler alert for the rest of the video. If you've never seen Taxi Driver, you may want to stop watching now. Since the departure of Betsy from his life, we see him sink deeper and deeper. His loneliness, combined with the moral corruption he sees around him, coupled with his inability to become a normal person, makes him harbor some bad thoughts. With no healthy outlet for him, he turns to violence, plotting to kill the presidential candidate Betsy works for, Charles Palantine. Yet there are several instances with a clear indication of his moral center, and many of them revolve around a girl named Iris, played by Jodie Foster, a 12-year-old prostitute pimped out by a guy named Sport, played by Harvey Keitel. Early on, she tries to escape Sport, but he comes and drags her out of the taxi, then throws Travis a $20 bill. Even though he eventually puts it in his wallet, his long hesitation to use it shows a conscience. He never spends it until he later returns it to another gangster who runs a hotel they operate out of. But more importantly, Travis genuinely tries to help Iris escape her situation by convincing her to leave and giving her money. Now, I've realized I've spent my entire video so far only talking about the main character, but he's really at the front and center of the whole movie. He has a claim to being one of the most entertaining, interesting, complex, and straight up captivating characters in any movie to me, and Robert De Niro's performance is thus one of my favorites of all time. And trust me, I'll get back to Travis's character, but there's plenty more I want to talk about, including Martin Scorsese's formidable filmmaking. For me, this is by far the most formally beautiful movie Scorsese's ever made to date, and this is evident right from the opening credits. Few other movies suck you into the mood as immediately as Taxi Driver does. With a dark music in the background, we open on a shot of steam billowing out of the sewer, then the taxi fills up the entire frame as it enters. We then get an extreme close-up of De Niro's eyes, with a flashing red neon light swallowing it up, and after we see the windshield and the blurry, colorful lights outside, followed by dreamy slow-motion images of the lights being washed away. The whole movie is not like this, of course, but the rest is just as seductive as its brilliant opening. What I love about Scorsese's direction here is that the compositions, camera moves, and editing techniques all feel so purposeful, as if there isn't a shot he didn't put a considerable amount of thought into. Again, take the beginning into account. Transitioning from the steamy credits to the first dialogue scene, we get steam before he opens the door into the office, kind of like he's leaving hell and entering the real world. We then get reverse shot compositions, with Travis's side being a low angle with the dispatcher in the background on the right, and on the owner's side, we get a high angle with what looks like an argument taking place in the window, setting the tension. By the way, I swear I didn't realize until I was writing this video that the guy on the right is Travis's friend, known as the Wizard, played by Peter Boyle. It's a great touch by Scorsese, even though 99% of people seeing this movie for the first time would never notice that it's him, considering we haven't even been introduced to the character yet. Anyway, just this simple shot reverse shot sequence has many developments, like the camera pushing into Travis's face, or the camera slowly moving up from a low to high angle here. There are plenty more formally exciting scenes like this. When Travis introduces himself to Betsy, for instance, the Albert Brooks character is hilariously spying on them in the background, creating a highly comic effect without ever being emphasized. There's a shot after "You Talking to Me," where Travis is narrating a supposed to be intimidating speech to no one in particular, whereas he says this, he turns to the camera in slow motion, but he suddenly pauses and starts the speech again. And when he does, the edit goes back to before he turned around, making him turn around again. There's a scene when he's buying the guns, and we get a haunting shot of him pointing the gun at the window, eventually aiming at two older ladies talking in the park. There's the first time he meets his friends in a diner, and we get a slow motion dolly shot of the two black pimps who are possibly staring him down. Then the camera cuts and tracks to Travis as his friends are trying to get his attention. Having a camera move like this happen after the coverage of the table has been established is exciting. There's a dance between Iris and Sport, one of the very few scenes without Travis, and the way they dance and Sport's one red fingernail looks like it's a demon seducing its prey. There's a shot of the gangster who manages the rooms walking back into complete darkness in the hall. I mean, I could go on and on. There's also the way he cuts between the second date that Travis and Betsy are on with this random drummer whose hair is so oily and greasy that it gives us a seedy feeling. Then it cuts from him to the marquee of the porno movie they're going to, with the drumming still playing in the background. And speaking of porno theaters, one of my favorite images is this one early on, where in this extremely small space, we have these men watching the screen where I have no idea what's happening. I swear, I'm not blurring this myself. They're really watching this blur on the screen with moaning noises. And on the left is a lady at the reception counter, a normal person who has to deal with creeps like these who will watch this kind of movie. Also, fun fact, Robert De Niro would literally marry the same actress that year, 1976. I guess his social skills were better in real life than in the movie. All this has in the background of it probably one of the best scores in film history. It's a final score by Bernard Herrmann, the same man who composed for classics like Citizen Kane, Vertigo, Psycho, and The Day the Earth Stood Still. And even among this great body of work, his score for Taxi Driver stands out. Its unforgettable main theme is surprisingly romantic and fits Travis's loneliness in a world where it feels like he doesn't belong. Even when the score is more sudden, throbbing, and violent, it still keeps its sense of romanticism with the use of the harp. Like acting, it's difficult to talk about music without playing it, making it necessary to try to come up with illustrative adjectives, which I'm not the best at. But the biggest compliment I can give it is that it's so evocative of the images and the feelings within the character's head that I literally could not imagine the movie without it. The film is dedicated to Bernard Herrmann, and it's clear why. It's as essential to the experience as the cinematography, and if I were to compile a list of my favorite original film scores, this will likely be in my top 5. Ultimately, everything leads to the explosive climax. Remember, my spoiler alert is still in effect. After failing to kill Palantine, he directs his violence to the prostitution operation. Whether it's a genuine attempt to rescue Iris or simply an outlet for his pent up rage, it's hard to tell. But whatever the case, I've long believed that this is one of, if not the most violent scene I've ever seen. It's so violent, not only because of the bloodshed, of which there's a lot, including a close up of someone getting his fingers blown off, but more for the atmosphere. In order to avoid the X rating, Scorsese desaturated the colors in this scene, and the result is incredible. It makes an already seedy environment look even more seedy and grimy, almost like the porno movie from before. It underlines everything else, like the blood, the darkness, the slow motion, the quiet at first, followed by the near constant moaning and screaming of, "I'll kill you." By the end, you really feel in your gut that something horrible has just taken place. Of course, movie violence and violence in real life have different effects on people. Most people can accept violence in movies, and some really get a kick out of movie carnage, but seeing death and murder in real life has a sickening effect on most people. I've been lucky enough to not have had any real life encounters with such violence, but this scene from Taxi Driver feels so potent that I feel like this is the closest I'll get, I hope. It's not fun, it's not amusing, it's not fantasy, it's terrifying and powerful. This is obviously a great scene to me, but let me now go over my other favorite moments of the movie. First up is the ending that follows the shootout. It's an ending that's long been one of my favorites ever since I first saw this movie. I guess partly because it still leaves questions to be answered. Basically, it ends with newspaper clippings praising Travis as a hero, with Iris's father narrating a heartfelt thank you letter to him for saving his daughter. Then, while on the beat, he gets a fare who turns out to be Betsy, who he hadn't had any interactions with since minute 39 of this 113-minute movie. They're nice with each other, nothing too dramatic is said. He drops her off, he gives her the ride for free, and leaves, saying so long. Seems standard so far, but at the very end, as the camera turns around towards Travis, the color scheme turns washed out and dreamlike again, like at the very beginning. Then, in some weird fast motion gesture, he adjusts the rearview mirror away from his face. This has led to this being one of the well known ambiguous endings in cinema, one with two distinct interpretations. There's, of course, the literal interpretation, where what you see is what happened, and in this interpretation, the very end can be seen as this cycle is starting again. Travis is recognized as a hero now, but him turning the mirror away from himself and that brief glance of his red face shows that his dark side still resides in him. The other interpretation is that this is a dream, and for me, this has always been my view. In my theory, Travis dies in the shootout, with him imitating shooting himself in the head, being his metaphorical death, followed by his real death. The floating camera leaving the apartment could even be said to be his soul leaving. What follows is like his fantasy, which everyone appreciates what he did, from Iris's parents to the general public, but most importantly, Betsy. They play cool with each other in this fantasy, with no cheesy declarations of love, apologies, or anything like that, just acting normal. With this, Travis has achieved becoming a person like other people. The very end is simply the dream ending, back to dying. The great thing about this ending is that both interpretations are totally valid, and I think they both work. Maybe how you take it just depends on you. I guess I'm more of the lonely romantic type, so perhaps that's why I follow the dream theory. But regardless of which one you follow, the music and emotions interacting with your long lost love resonate very strongly, making this one of my favorite movie endings. Next, I also love the scene of Travis eating breakfast with Iris at the diner. In it, Travis tries to convince her to leave the world of prostitution and go back home to her parents, and I love it because we see his humanity more clearly here than anywhere else. Between his time with Betsy and now, he's been swallowed up by guns and wallowing in antisocial behavior, but finally, after all that darkness, he has a moment in the sun. He speaks very clearly and plainly to her about how her situation is wrong and how she should go home, which she probably hasn't heard before. She's been surrounded by pimps and gangsters for God knows how long, and here comes Travis finally giving it to her straight, making her realize how messed up her situation is. I especially love his speech to her after she calls him square. De Niro plays it perfectly, because none of this seems like a character break, rather it just enriches Travis as a complicated, contradictory person. Speaking of De Niro, I also love a moment when he's talking to the wizard about how he's having some bad thoughts and wants to do something about it, but he can't quite say it. Like he's too embarrassed to say what he's really thinking, or like he knows that what he's thinking is wrong. It's yet another example of subtle direction in acting. Finally, speaking of Scorsese, I also want to mention the scene that features Scorsese himself as an actor, and it's a disturbing one. He tells Travis to stop and look at the figure in the window. He says that that's his wife, and that she's cheating on her with a black man, but he uses the N word. And he talks about how he's going to kill her with a 44 Magnum. All this time, Travis says nothing, but I think this scene is important because he listens. In a way, the Scorsese character is a much more messed up guy than Travis is, and he starts planting the seeds in his head for using violence. I mean, the first thing he wants to buy is a 44 Magnum, which is what Scorsese talked about. It's definitely a bold move to cast yourself as this kind of despicable character, but he does a great job in the role. It's also interesting that he appears earlier in the film as well, in the shot that introduces us to Betsy. But in the end, what I love about Taxi Driver is how it's a tour de force in just about every way possible. Robert De Niro gives one of my favorite ever performances here as Travis Bickle, a walking contradiction that's impossible to pin down, and one who fascinates with literally every single line delivery and expression. Martin Scorsese directs it with such power and purpose so that the movie is endlessly entertaining from beginning to dreamy end, and Bernard Herrmann's magnificent music haunts the entire movie. All that stuff is clear, but the reason the movie stands as a great piece of art is how it continues and will continue to hold relevance for an extremely long time. Because a movie refuses to be simple minded and refuses to label its issues, it can hold up at all times. If Travis was thought of as a disillusioned Vietnam veteran back in the 70s, he could probably also be thought of as a, quote, incel today, or some sort of frustrated, constantly online male with fascist tendencies. The point is, none of these labels are or would be all encompassing for the character. Rather, the movie invites us to look at an extreme example of someone from the brink of society in some way and regard him as human. This isn't always an easy thing to do, and surely the movie revels in the challenge by presenting everything filtered through Travis's mindset via things like the worship of guns and the underlying racism. But as Jodie Foster says, what makes you so high and mighty? Will you tell me that? Didn't you ever try looking at your own eyeballs in the mirror? It'd be much easier to label someone as a horrible person and move on. But Taxi Driver shows both how someone can be so lonely to the point that they go down a dangerous and unhealthy rabbit hole, and in my view, how we should try to see the humanity of said people. The movie offers no easy answers. Thus, watching this movie is an endlessly rich experience for me, and I can only say continuing to morph and evolve as I get older and as society continues to change. It's my 30th favorite movie. Thanks for watching my video. Goshou makatu ni arigatou gozaimasu. How is this movie only number 30 on my list? You'll just have to wait for number 29 to find out.